Welcome to the Connectors Podcast, the show that explores the importance of making meaningful connections for personal and professional growth and happiness. We will share how building and recognizing strong connections in life can help you achieve your goals, find fulfillment in your work, and how you can create opportunities to build a purposeful and meaningful future. Good afternoon, guys. How are you?
Doing awesome. Yeah, excited to be here.
Good. It's a beautiful day.
Welcome. Today we have RJ Rongcal, and I'm going to let Quentin do the intro and share his bio with you today.
For sure. So RJ is an educator of both children and adults, and he has recently begun his 13th year as a second grade classroom teacher. He's also become a certified mindfulness teacher, and that was back in 2019. And his personal meditation practice has been an instrumental part of his success and enjoyment of all aspects of life, both professionally and personally. And this is why we asked him on the show. RJ has practiced and studied mindfulness in a variety of contexts, including numerous silent meditation retreats, as well as a 9-month residency at Gampo Abbey, where he lived as a Buddhist monk. He is a student of the Buddhist nun, teacher, and author Pema Chodron, and he lives in Seattle with his wife Jamie and their dog Bean. How are Jamie? How's RJ, Jamie, and Bean today?
Oh, we're just swell. Yeah, we're nesting in our new place here, just north of Seattle, and they were kind of because dogs can bark at intermittent times, so they're off taking a walk, and
okay.
We got our cozy little, nuclear family, so to speak, and yeah.
Nice. Are you in lots of, I guess, woods or greenery area type around Seattle? Like it's
a bit of a mix. Yeah, Seattle's, it's the evergreen state in Washington State, so there's a decent amount of green and pine trees, and so it's super lucky to have like parks in the middle of the city to go walking, and you're never too far from nature. It's really quite amazing.
Yeah.
Be like in the city, like gridlock city, and then a few blocks away, like, oh, there's a park all of a sudden.
Nice. I love
That's
that.
a gift. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Awesome. So RJ and I met because we worked together a couple of years ago.
The years, oh my goodness, the years just fly by. I can't believe it's been a decade, since probably about almost a decade.
It's been a decade. It's literally because I moved from Peru to Canada.
We're both teaching at the American School of Lima. And, living that international life. I guess you're in a sense, you're a resident there now, but you're international, all around. Yeah. But
I did a long trip to end up in Canada, but yeah,
you are. You're like the international gangsta. Yeah.
I was really pleased. I was really pleased to see your message to reconnect, and we had that kind of mindfulness yoga link way back at FDR. So, and we've probably seen each other kind of bits and pieces on social media and stuff, kind of about our lives, and kind of got a sense of like, okay, so and so still doing this and they're still doing that, So
and I always felt like we wanted it to become a pattern and a bit of a habit, you in your life, me in my life. And so RJ,
just a pattern of doing the mindfulness and yoga and that type of thing.
So I was more yoga and RJ was more mindfulness. And what happened was RJ teaches in the second grade. I taught middle and high school, and there were options in the morning for the youth to have different sort of clubs and activities. So I offered a 1-hour yoga just because it's sort of different, and why not get kids involved in different types of sports that are also good for the mind as well.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. It went so well. And then RJ was like, okay, can I use your music room for a meditation space? Because I had this huge amphitheater style music room. So then RJ started offering meditation in like a Wednesday or Thursday afternoon in my space, and we would sit and enjoy the silence.
Yeah, no, I found it particularly, I mean, I found it, but it seems, and I've heard from other teachers, like they found it particularly helpful, because I was mostly gearing it for teachers and staff, because obviously we were, teaching all across the world.
Busy,
and one of the hardest jobs in the world. So yeah, I just remember teachers coming to the room and being like, okay, I need this, like just set this aside. And it was like, I remember one teacher describing it like a reset button, like, all right, it's been this roller coaster of a day, and just let's put the pause, but also kind of reset it, like not just slow down, or not just even like stuff away the rest of the day, but just kind of start over in a way.
I love that. And I really am excited to get into these topics, because I find they're very important right now. Mindfulness, meditation, yoga, finding ways to quiet the mind and be still, because we live in such a fast-paced world. I think it's important to reconnect with the self. I'd love to hear a little bit more about, from that, I guess, point in time when you met Quentin, and how you got into the mindfulness practice.
Oh boy. Well, I think like a lot of people, I was pretty stressed out as a young teacher. My first post overseas teaching was in the Middle East, was in Kuwait, at the American school there. And I was seeing a therapist, and I just happened to find an American therapist in Kuwait, which is just like completely fortuitous and super, and it turned out to be a really good fit. And in passing, a teacher had mentioned like, oh yeah, it's really helpful for me to meditate, and it helps me relieve stress. And I was like, meditation? Oh, that sounds interesting. So I asked my therapist about it, and he sent me some links, some guided meditations. This was October of 2011. It was it's turning out to be a seismic moment in my life, looking back. But I watched this video that was, and I'll probably mention this guy later, but this molecular biologist and scientist and mindfulness thought leader named Jon Kabat-Zinn. And I watched this video by him talking about really mindfulness as a whole, but also his program called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. And it was like an hour of him just rambling. He doesn't even like have notes or anything. He just talks and uses big words. And it's like, I didn't understand probably most of it, but I was completely taken at the fact that, oh, there's another way to be happy other than just having life work out for you, externally in particular. Like, I think most of us, even if we're aware of this, are trying to get just the right pieces together in life. And okay, if I get everything rearranged in just the right way, I can just coast.
Right. So always looking to the external factors.
And then like, and even if it's like, and even internally, like if I could just change the way I, whatever. But so he introduced this kind of way to use your mind in a different way that wasn't necessarily intellectual, and in a way that gave, or that introduced oneself to their own kind of internal strength and power, to show that one has agency over how they use their mind, right? Because we're so often influenced, our minds are so often influenced by a ping there, or somebody screaming over there, or somebody saying this to us. And our minds are just in reactivity mode. And that's the kind of lens where our mind is looking through, in a sense. But again, that introduction to mindfulness was like, oh, my mind doesn't have to be this reactive, and I can actually flip the script and be a little bit more of a, control is kind of a strong word. I don't think that's the right word, but be more of have more agency over how my mind is used and how it responds to external stimuli and internal stimuli, for that matter. So it was like, I heard that, and I started like looking up. Back then there was like 5 podcasts, it seems.
Yeah.
There's like 1 million podcasts just on mindfulness.
Yeah.
Like 3 back then. But so I found all these different resources, and everybody was saying, you have to go on retreat. You have to do the meditation retreat. You have to meditate every day. and go off in silence and do it. So 2 months later, I booked a flight to Sri Lanka. I found a temple there. I sat for 10 days in silence. And
oh my God.
It's I mean, I know really common, but if people have done a retreat, it's probably this 10-day one. Anyway, so I've just committed myself to doing, at least a couple weeks of silent retreat a year, including the daily meditation practice. And yeah, it's just, I don't know. So that was kind of the start of it. And then along the way, I started leading it in schools and with teachers and staff, and then found out it was very fulfilling to offer something like this to others. And along the way, got certified and continue to teach. I was just an assistant teacher on a weekend retreat, actually this weekend. Cool. I just got back yesterday. Yeah.
So you do you said a retreat every year, like a meditation retreat or like a quiet retreat?
Yeah. It's usually it comes out to maybe 14 days, something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Or maybe it's usually like, it's turned out the last few years to be 2 1-week retreats a year. So
yeah.
Okay. So, and then maybe some day longs here and there, like a day.
Mm-hmm.
I find it very tough to sit for. I've never done a vipassana. A vipassana is a 10-day retreat. I've never done it. I think I'm too ADD, and I just couldn't stand that. Like, I can stand the silence. I can stand chatting to myself, or the internal monologue, or quieting the internal monologue, and just enjoying the nature around me, and being in quiet community. But I think I've done 3 days, and that's been lovely, a very good cleanse. But I think getting to like 5 days would be, Edvard Munch's The Scream.
Well, this is so interesting, because this is what I say at the beginning of every retreat or the beginning of every class. I say, our mind probably has a prediction about how it's going to go and about how it's going to be. But in the end, we don't really know. I mean, you couldn't be Edvard Munch The Scream for 7 days constantly. It would feel like that for a few minutes, and then you get hungry, you go eat, you get distracted by a bird in the sky, and then maybe you would feel like that scream again, but it would be this kind of ebb and flow, most likely, right? So we tend to concretize our predictions about future, or even what's happening now. Like, this feels like hell, and it's going to feel like this forever. Like, I can't imagine it being different, So this is really a one of the gifts of mindfulness, that it teaches us to see through the kind of reification of mind, or the kind of like fixation of mind. And it's really, and that's a mental construction, right? So when we have to kind of see through that construction to what's actually going on, and what's actually going on is, constant change.
Absolutely. And I like what you said, the agency in which we use our mind. And I think there'd be a lot of people listening that would like to kind of understand, how do we get to that space, and what are some of the steps and practices that we can try each day to get to that mindfulness space. And so you do feel you have agency over, I guess, the way you're observing your thoughts and your mind, and how you fit into the world.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I got stuck on the phrase like get to this certain place, right? Because in essence, it's already here. Right? It's, and it's a lot of it is kind of sifting away or letting go of the things that are keeping us from noticing that sense of mindfulness or that awareness. I kind of use mindfulness and awareness interchangeably throughout. So I might say awareness just to, as well. I mean, really, mindfulness is being aware of what's going on. It's being conscious, right? It's knowing what you're doing, what's happening in real time. So I can be, I'm trying my best to be mindful as much as I can right now. I'm feeling the nodding of my head. I'm seeing your faces, the colors in the screen. Even though I'm in motion, even though I'm talking, I feel my body in the chair, So so just, yeah, to get there is interesting. I think
maybe that's not the right choice of words, right?
Yeah. I'm not criticizing the choice of words. I'm just trying to frame it in the most effective way. I think one of the most direct ways is to simply tune into the senses in some way. You know, what am I hearing? What am I seeing? What am I feeling? Right. So, and you know, that's kind of one of these like trauma-sensitive, trauma-informed practices, like name 5 things in the room, you know, if you're having a panic attack. But this is even less conceptual than that. This is just, oh, I'm seeing and I know I'm seeing, right? I'm thinking and I know I'm thinking at the same time, you know? So this knowing, it's like something's happening and you know it's happening. There's so much of our waking hours, something's happening, or we're doing something, we don't realize we're doing it. We're thinking and we realize we're thinking. We're driving home and we don't realize that drive home, or we don't remember that drive home, right? Where were we, right? So we're just like missing these big chunks of our life. So just this like remembering, like, and that remembering can only happen now, right? Just this recognition, like, oh, everything's happening now. There's the sound, you know, there's movement of my hand, and that's it, you know? So as soon as you think, how can I be more mindful? Oh, it's happening right now. I'm aware right now.
Yeah, I'm aware to be mindful. Yeah.
What about right now? Right? Because I get stuck in this sometimes, like trying to strive to be someone or trying to achieve a certain mental state. You're like, what about right now? Could I be aware right now? I can feel my breath. Okay. And it's moment by moment, you know? So that's a little bit of that.
You can find us on the following social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube.
If I can give a crack at it from a more yoga sort of perspective, we would say that it gives you agency because it allows you to detach. So it teaches you that your mind is not you. Your thoughts are things that, like, we try to give metaphors to it and say, your thoughts, they're going to come crashing like waves on a beach. They're endless. But, you know, try and picture them as clouds in the sky. Push them away from you. Push the thoughts away and view them as something further outside of what you're encompassing and what you're feeling and seeing and being right now. And
the observer, the more observer.
Yes, exactly. The Quentin that is chatting right now is like the active Quentin that is switched on and he's active listening, etc. But there is still an observer in the back of my mind that is watching the whole thing as well.
Yeah. Who are we really? What's going on? Am I that observer, or am I the one that's like in the front? Like,
I love it. I love these questions. Yeah.
Me too.
Sure. You guys want to do a quick mindful check-in, as my teacher calls it? Yeah.
Yes.
We can maybe
please.
Maybe even like 3 or 4 minutes, even, you know. So these are 3 questions you can ask yourself any time of the day, right? That can be helpful to kind of cut through that habitual thinking or activity, assuming you have the time and space for it.
And if you would like more of that, RJ is offering a mindfulness workshop coming up, and you have more exciting things planned as well. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I'm starting another MBSR training, which is short for mindfulness-based stress reduction, an 8-week class on October 16th in the Seattle area, actually in the heart of Seattle. So if you're in the area, please check it out. It's on my website at rjrongcal.com. And then hopefully I'll have something on Zoom in the winter. You'll just have to go to my website and just see the updates. I haven't updated my winter schedule yet, but the fall schedule is up. And yeah, it's not a ton of stuff so far, but it'll be more and more as I get more of a groundswell of people.
That's it.
Yeah.
And it's tough having a full-time day job and also wanting to share this passion of yours as well on the side. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's such an important practice, I think. And I've noticed even throughout my life, the moments I've just been flying through on autopilot, and I can look back and observe that and say, oh, wow, I don't think I was being mindful at all. and probably not in my body, right? I think people have this idea that sometimes our mind and our body are separate, and they don't think of them connected. And through meditation and yoga and things like that, you discover you're really, your one whole being. You teach kids, and so I'm wondering, is this something you also implement into your teaching practice at school?
Yeah, that's probably the number one question I get. As soon as I say I teach kids. Yeah, the short answer is yes. But I'm not, I do a lot of experimenting. I'm not trained to teach it to kids. So kind of learning as I go. What I found is children respond best to visualizations. And when it's formed in a narrative, if I just say, focus on your breath,
right,
it's so abstract to them. If I say something like, imagine there is a delicious bowl of chicken soup in front of you. Breathe in like you're through your nose, like you're smelling the soup. And then blow out like you're cooling it down. That's much more tangible for them. Or blowing out candles on a birthday cake, or, there's a number of metaphors, right? So those kind of things can be helpful. Movement is good. So that's been the most consistent mindfulness practice in my classroom, has been mindful movement of some kind. Not necessarily yoga, maybe some kind of yoga-ish, but just being aware of their body and movement, and maybe some balancing poses, and stretches and things. My personal opinion with mindfulness in schools is that I think a big focus should be teaching it to the teachers and allowing them to embody the practices so they can really exemplify how mindfulness can resonate in a classroom when they're teaching from a more grounded place. So asking children to be mindful as a teacher, when you as a teacher are frazzled and out of sorts, is a little unfair, So
right, it's true. It's like where your parents asking you to calm down, but they're yelling at you to do something. It's sort of counterintuitive, right? So it has to start with the leadership. Yeah. And
I think with children, just some emotional intelligence of, one, I'm having emotion, I'm having strong emotions right now. They don't have to rule my life, right? There is a way to work with them, and it's okay that they're there, That's a big piece. And likewise with thoughts, right? It's like I'm having these like worrisome thoughts, and it's okay they're there, and they don't have to control you. That's a lesson for kids and adults, right?
Yeah.
Now, is mindfulness all about the self, or is it also about being mindful of others around you?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Well, who is being mindful of others around you? It's the self, right?
Right.
But going back, on a real basic level, going back to those senses, the tactile sensations of mindfulness, and with others, you're seeing, right? So I'm mindful of seeing your faces and everything, and but this leads me to think about mindful communication, right? Which is a whole field in itself. Right. So one key aspect with mindful communication is to, and this isn't easy, and I'm currently working on it now. I'm sure I'll continue to work on it for decades, is being aware of yourself and others at the same time. Right? So having a sense of embodiedness while you're also aware of the other person. So it's not an easy skill. It takes a lot of practice. And maybe it's an oscillation of like, I'm aware of them. I forgot about my body. Okay, here's my body. Here's how I feel after I said that. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. Okay, this feels kind of like this way in my body. Okay, let me see if I can empathize with that other person. Okay. All right. And so there's this awareness of mind, this agency, right, of mind allows us to expand enough to other people. And this is the impartial nature of mindfulness. And by extension, not by extension, but by kind of context, kindness is a big part of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but.
Yeah, no, it just kind of got me thinking about a conversation I had with my son, and he's 16, and we were talking about emotional intelligence and mindfulness and things like that. And we were talking about the curriculum in school and how things are taught, and wishing that there was a little bit better, curriculum that focuses on some of these things. And his rebuttal was, well, I think it's up to the parents to teach us that, not necessarily teachers. So I just found that interesting because but a lot of parents don't, if we grew up in our kind of chaotic world, I think there's a lot of us that didn't learn mindfulness. Hence why I think it's important kids learn it. But again, it's something that I'm unsure. I don't know who should be teaching it. I just think it's good for everybody to learn. Yeah.
Yeah. So what did the question come up as far as like, how am I mindful with my 16-year-old?
Yes. Yeah. Right. So we touched on a couple of things because I was relating it to even when I was a kid and my relationship with my parents, which was much different. Him and I have a very, very open communicative relationship where I didn't have that same thing with my parents for a long time. So that's how it came up in that context.
Okay. Yeah.
Does he see a difference in his relationship with you as opposed to your relationship with your parents?
Oh, yeah.
Does he see that okay.
Oh, yeah. He sees the differences. Yeah.
So he's appreciative of this
I think so.
new way of parenting. And
the things he'll tell me, I'm just blown away because these were things I never told my parents. So it's nice that we have that. Yeah.
Yay. That's awesome. Bravo. Like, pat yourself on the back, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun being a parent, but you learn a lot along the way. You learn a lot about yourself. Yeah.
I think that's half of my fear of ever wanting a kid is the amount that I would learn about myself just by being in the situation. I'll have a cat or a dog or a little parrot. That's okay.
Yeah, you don't know how it's going to go until you're in it, truly. So,
yeah. And that's very much what working with young kids is like. They're very sort of reactive in the moment. And we were talking a bit in our prep meeting about experiential learning and comparing that to sort of intellectual learning. And what do you feel about that with mindfulness?
Well, we just did some of it, right? And that was in that short practice we did, and it kind of goes back to Joe's question about, how do I get to practicing this, or how do I get to being mindful? And I mean, a pause is really, we don't always have the time for a pause, but that was a few minutes that we just did. And I would guess, unless, I don't know how busy anyone's scheduled, that they don't have 3 or 4 minutes, to pause. And that's the thing, you really have to, and that was a direct experiential experience of mindfulness, where through those 3 questions, assuming you weren't just completely blatantly ignoring what I was saying, and you notice, I forget, one of you said, I got sleepy or I got really tired, that's, this is informative in a way, right? Like, oh, all this extra stimuli is, really keeps me up, just with devices and life, etc. And as soon as we take those away, like, oh, my body's tired.
Yeah.
Which, there's a direct experiential learning. I think, I wonder, this came to mind, Joe, as you're talking about your son, that the generation coming up right now, they're so inundated with information and they know some things. And I wonder, I can't quite picture a clear graph of this, but the difference between the amount of intellectual knowledge we have, of information, and the distance that is from how we actually behave and act, right? So does the information that we learn change the way we live, right? Is a really important question. And my assertion is that the more that we can embody whatever kind of learning it is. It doesn't have to be mindfulness, but the more that we can tune into the experience of life, which is only through the senses, like I said, I'm counting the mind as a sixth sense here. Then the more that we can embody those lessons, so that it shifts the way that we live and go about our day-to-day lives, so that not just we get rid of habits or bad habits, but we actually form new habits.
New ones, yeah.
Right, because you can read every mindfulness book there is in the world, but if you haven't actually sat down and been quiet to practice mindfulness, it's almost useless, if not completely useless, right?
Totally.
It's kind of like, as one teacher put it several years ago, it's kind of like getting a master's degree in chocolate, right? You know all the scientific components of what chocolate is comprised of, but if you haven't tasted it, it's pointless. Like, how could you describe chocolate to anybody unless you actually tasted it? You know, it's like, oh no, but I've studied a lot of. I know a lot of information about it. You know, okay. So I'm always skeptical of people that, well, no, I won't go that way.
You can go any which way you like.
Come on, guru. No, it's okay.
No, whenever, one of the things I kind of not fact check, but kind of check when I think about people teaching mindfulness or meditation is like how much time they've spent practicing it, you know? Yeah. It would be like going to a dentist who doesn't brush his teeth, you know? It's like, so that's kind of like my 2 cents on that experience versus intellect, you know?
Yeah. So how do we help people, I guess, because I understand the benefits. I think Quentin understands the benefits. We do have to practice it on the show because we have to be listening and paying attention and mindful of how we're responding. And I guess it's hard to really explain. It's kind of one of these things that's not tangible, right? How the benefits of mindfulness and how it's going to help you.
Yeah.
But, you know, how can people understand that? Like, it helps us connect to ourselves and increases the chance for connections with others and people, nature, and all those things.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a bit of a hard sell because the effects can be slow. The benefits can be slow. And of course, in this world, it's the fastest world we've ever lived in, where gratification is immediate. So we're really competing with media and all the other forms of entertainment out there, you know. I think for some people, and me, myself included, some people, they run out of options, you know. Like, I have no other, like, I've tried every bag of tricks, everything in my bag of tricks for self-care, and I'm still depleted. I'm still just grinding my teeth. I need something else, you know. I guess so. I guess those people don't need much convincing, but it's really a matter of somebody. I think people really have to be honest with themselves. Like, how much do I want to change? Like, and how important is it to me to really suffer less, right? How important is it to me to not always get stuck in these same patterns of self-doubt or self-denigration or overeating or substance abuse? Because if someone isn't really having that honest conversation with themselves, then they won't consider mindfulness at all. They'll just keep looking for other escape routes, right? And there's no, to steal a book title from my teacher, there's no escape, you know, the wisdom of no escape. Like, you're always wherever, you know, it's just, you end up suffering no matter whatever kind of escape route you take. So there has to be a real willingness, a real wanting to. So this is the dilemma I run to in the classroom with students. Is I always have students that don't want to do it, but as a teacher, I'm required. I mean, more in the traditional subjects, like, I need all 100% of you to understand your multiplication facts or how to add and subtract. I just can't wait until you feel like it, you know. But with mindfulness is a bit different. You can't force mindfulness on a staff. You can't force it. So that's kind of one of the beautiful organic things about it, is that when people come to it, they're really coming from a place of, I think, of honesty. When they show up at a meditation center or a retreat, like, they're hurting, they're having a hard time. They're not just going there because they're writing a research paper. So if that willingness isn't there, then there's other things. I'm not saying like you can, it's this way or no way. Obviously there's yoga, and there's taking care of your nutrition, sleep, cognitive behavior therapy. I'm a fan of psychotherapy, and so it's not the only way. There's other ways to pay attention to your mind or and such, but I've just found mindfulness the most direct and the most powerful and the most deep. So it has to come from a really deep place, and that, namely, that willingness and that wanting to change and that wanting to try it out, and being open, right? It's like, this popped into my head earlier, Quentin, when you said, I can't do 10 days. I can do three. Like, I don't mean to pick on you, but just
go on. It's fine.
It's like, but if life is just like, oh my gosh, I need more than 3 days, like, it's just 3 days isn't going to fix what I've just gone through, so I don't know. People come to it when they come to it, it's hard to force that. Mm-hmm. But you want to have it as an offering, as an availability. So people know that it's there. So I was introduced to mindfulness in my early 20s, and I wasn't ready. Your mind has to be ready. Yeah. I started when I was 27. I'm 39 now. But I read an article about it when I was like 24, and I was like, this is dumb.
What do you mean all these CEOs and leaders sit for 30 minutes and it somehow supercharges them?
Yeah, let's get some stuff done.
Yeah.
I have plenty of time to sleep when I'm dead.
If you're looking for a podcast that will inspire you to connect with people from all walks of life and various industries, we invite you to join us to listen into our open and transparent discussions, where we share our stories, triumphs, and challenges, and provide ways of connecting with our dynamic guests.
Lots of people that try to meditate, and I hear the same thing every time when they struggle with it. It's that I can't quiet my mind. I can't get rid of my thoughts. Yeah. That's what they say. So what is some of the, that's a misconception of how meditation works.
Yeah. Right? You're not going to get rid of everything and suddenly your brain is this beautiful, quiet, still lake. Mm-hmm. That doesn't really happen. More from my understanding is it's an acceptance that those things are always going to be there. And these little attachments are always going to come and grab at you like a bunch of fishing hooks. Like, come look at this. Come look at that. Ooh, you got an itch in your back. You got to scratch it. No, you don't. You can just sit and let that thought come and go.
Yeah.
What do you think, RJ?
No, that's exactly. I agree completely with what you just said. And also to note that mindfulness is really this umbrella term for a range of different practices, right? And it's a whole nother discussion to talk about the origins of it and everything. And actually, just as an aside, as a way to avoid, misappropriation, or, that this does have the mindfulness movement, or mainstream mindfulness, is largely informed, from the Buddhist tradition of 2,500 years ago. And that tradition was informed by the Vedic and Hindu traditions, and probably the Yoga Sutras also. So because the Buddha Shakyamuni, who wasn't a god or anything, he was just a person, he grew up learning about the Hindu tradition. But he stumbled upon this practice of mindfulness. He stumbled upon it. But he really articulated it in a way that was really accessible for people. So all to say, there's various flavors of how to practice mindfulness and what it means for different people in different traditions. But at the simplest level, and this is, I think, a really accessible definition for mindfulness, is that it's simply paying attention in the present moment, non-judgmentally, right? So, the present moment and non-judgmental is another synonym for acceptance, right? So if you see in that definition, there's nothing about being calm. It doesn't say pay attention to get calm, or pay attention to relax, right? Or pay attention to feel good.
Quiet things down.
Yeah, exactly, right? So if you're feeling anxious or having, this waterfall of thoughts, it's possible to also be mindful of that, right? To be non-judgmental. If you're having a judgmental thought, you don't have to judge that thought also. Yes, you can step back a bit. And again, this is like, we've had decades, a lifetime of doing the opposite of this, right? So it's going to take more than 5 minutes to undo it. It's going to take more than 20 minutes. It's going to take a long, long time to undo and unlearn these patterns. So that's another thing that people say, like, well, I tried it. It's like saying I went to the gym for a day.
Yeah.
I didn't get swole,
Yeah.
So I just walk my dog now.
I think a lot of people that I know that struggle with this would resonate with using that term, non-judgmental. I think that would be helpful, just to not judge your thoughts, learn how to not judge your thoughts. And I know personally for myself, this is what has helped me. And now that I know how to do it, it's so much easier to just do it every time, right? Because the practice, where it took me a while to get it. And you're right, I had to learn it and accept it and want it in the time that when I did. In the past, maybe I just wasn't there yet. So it is really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is the way that it's packaged up in North America as well. Like some of a lot of the yoga here is very yoga light. Come and stretch, and that's it. You can tick the box and say you've done your mindfulness. You're working on your mind, body, and spirit. Now you just kind of stretched your muscles a bit. I don't know. I did teach in yoga studios for a couple of years in Canada, and then I very quickly moved to big box gyms that had yoga as one of their classes, because I was doing way more positive impact with those populations who had never experienced yoga. Let's get the bodybuilders, like Haitian bodybuilders who've never sat and breathed, to actually like come and be like, yeah, man, that was great. I'll come back next week. You're like, oh, okay, awesome. So glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I had more impact that way.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I heard a really good, on my retreat this weekend, I was assisting my mentor, Tim, and he used this word for mindfulness that I hadn't heard before. He said bodyfulness. And what I mean is the body. So we think of the mindfulness as something up here. It's like the mind is running the show. And you noted this, Joe, about the mind and body separation. So the word mindfulness is actually, it could be kind of an unfortunate translation of the word sati, which is the Pali word for mindfulness from ancient India. So sati was translated into mindfulness in the late 1800s. And it could just have easily been translated into awareness, or sati could have been translated into attention, because it's about paying attention, right? Or being conscious, So we're stuck with the word mindfulness. And because of that, it makes it easier to just think like, okay, this is my mind, driving my body around, and but really, man, if there is anything to emphasize when it comes to mindfulness, it's really mindfulness of the body, right? And the more and more you deepen, and I'm speaking to this because of what you mentioned with these bodybuilders and these people working out of the gym. Of course, they love their bodies, right? Or they're trying to get to love their bodies. So it makes sense. They would be like, oh, I'm feeling this new connection with my body, right? So just by paying attention to it, right? And at the same time, befriending my body. It's not something I hate, and it's like something I can actually be with. You know, we spend time with our friends. You know, it's not something, you know. So by being aware of your body, you're spending time with it, you know, and getting to know it, and noticing this interplay between the mind and body, and thus over time dissolving the mentally constructed barrier of mind and body. You know, so I really again, since I mentioned the Buddhist teachings, the four kind of main teachings of mindfulness dating back 2,500 years ago, the very first one is to practice mindfulness of the body, and it's the longest section of that sutra or sutta in the canon, and then it goes on to feelings and thoughts and thinking styles and things. But so if one were to just sit with the feeling of the body breathing, because if you're paying attention to the breath, you're paying attention to the body, right? So if you're just feeling the breath and that's it, letting thoughts come and go like clouds, you know, that's incredibly, incredibly helpful and beneficial. But one would have to find out for themselves, right?
Yeah, you got to sit and do it. And talking of that, how do you implement mindfulness practices like the 3 questions that you helped us through? How do you implement this as sort of like a daily system and keep it fresh and keep wanting to sit and practice?
Keep wanting to sit. Yeah, and noticing the benefits, right? That it's, you know, it's like, I think something that shows up for people is that when they start meditating, they start noticing a lot of flaws or a lot of ways that they're suffering. And there's a little bit of tilting the
yeah.
It's like we do talk a lot about noticing difficulty and noticing struggle in mindfulness practice, but it's also just as important to notice peace and to notice moments of, and to be mindful of moments of ease and restfulness. And that can, you know, inform your body like, oh yeah, that actually is really good for me. Let me try it again. Yeah. Well, going, you know, in addition to what I said earlier about willingness, right? You have to want to do it, and there has to be, you know, whatever it takes to be motivated to inspire you to listen to podcasts like this one. You can motivate yourself, read books, etc., and hang out with people that are like-minded, probably. So you can't, you know, we haven't talked about the importance of a community yet, but a community is really, you could argue, is instrumental to really fully taking on the practice of mindfulness. So finding other meditators or other aspiring meditators, you know, taking stock of your life, your inventory, an inventory of things, just lifestyle choices, even, or the context of your life of things that are not allowing it to happen. Like, are you getting enough sleep? Am I eating well? Am I exercising? You know, because if those things aren't in place, it's going to be a lot harder to be mindful, right? Just at all. So
that's so true. Yeah.
So, so sometimes I'm up at night and I'm like, should I go to bed now or should I meditate? Do I need more sleep or do I need, you know, do I need sleep first or do I need to meditate first? So that's a whole exploration that can happen too, you know. But, you know, starting out small is best, you know, 3 minutes a day for a week and increase it. It's better to do a little bit every day versus a lot once a week.
Yes.
Like studying for a test, right?
Yes.
You know, so and building it into your day. You know, I've kind of built in a pause in my day, especially at work, when I'm washing my hands. You know, we got really good at washing our hands over the last 3 or 4 years. You know, I hope we did. That was always a real, I don't know, accessible moment to pause. And it was actually not necessarily, I would do that. I would notice the feeling of warmth and soap and everything in my hands. But like right before I'd open the door to go back to work, like while I'm in the bathroom, it was like one conscious breath. And then some days I'm like, I have more time. Maybe I'll do 3 conscious breaths. Am I really going to miss anything if I'm like if it's 15 seconds later? And then some days I'm like, I might just not sit, but, I might just pause for 10 breaths here, So finding these little moments or cracks in our day can, it doesn't just have to be 30 minutes or an hour or when everything.
I find my moment is right after work, because I was noticing sometimes that transition of me being done work to my evening had this moment of, what am I going to do next? To keep myself busy, like when my son's not with me and, I have lots of things on the go, but I felt like I needed this break. So that I started meditating right after work. And one thing and you mentioned the washing of the hands, and it just triggered something I read. Have you heard of Osho? He's like a spiritual leader.
Yeah.
And I've read some of his books. And one thing that he said that resonated with me is the practice of when you're washing the dishes or when you're cleaning and mopping the floors. So when you're doing your cleaning, which seem like work we don't always want to do, that's actually a good time to practice mindfulness, and it can be like your meditation. So when I started to think of those things in that way, it resonated with me, and that's how I try to, I use those moments in the day when I'm washing my sink or something to actually use it as a mindfulness practice.
When I sweep my floors, I kind of think of it as a Zen Buddhist, like I'm in a huge forest in, all of the, like some sort of Japanese forest monastery thing going on with the monks sweeping. And I'm like, why do I need to sweep fast? All the dust is going to fly up and get everywhere. Just sweep slow.
Yeah, why are we such in a rush all the time? Yeah.
You're going to catch all the dust and you're going to clean it well, and it'll only take 5 minutes more.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So there's no shortage of moments where it can be applied, and you're already remembering it, and remembering to do this. And actually another definition of mindfulness that I find particularly interesting is that word sati. It takes its root word from memory or from remembering. So I used to remind myself of this a lot, that mindfulness is you're remembering to be mindful. You have to remember to do it, right? It's actually not that hard to be mindful, but it's hard to remember because we always forget.
Yeah.
So this rehabituation of our patterns encourages this remembering over, like, I forgot. Oh, here we go. I just remembered. I remember, and your body remembers, all that. So yeah, little by little. And then, I really encourage daily or near daily meditation practice, retreat practice. I'm speaking from personal experience and from others I know. I think to a degree, the science shows this too, that it's cumulative, that the more you do it, the more benefit it'll have, so you do it a little, you have a little benefit. You do it a lot, you'll have more benefit. So something to keep in mind too, how important it is to you.
I love that. Well, RJ, I wanted to ask you one last question before we sign off.
Yeah.
And we ask everyone this question, and we like to know, what is connection to you?
What is connection to me? Seems like it's everything, right? It's kind of a real spiritual answer. It's everything, man. We're all one.
Please don't get out of crystal.
No mysticism here. But well, actually, when you first contacted me about doing this podcast, I was like, oh, that's such a cool idea. That's such a cool theme, is making connections. And the first thought was a connection to yourself, right? And that's what we've been talking about this whole time, is connecting to yourself. And yes, you pay attention to yourself, you learn about the way your mind works and its relationship with other things around you. But I think another piece to connecting to yourself is, we've touched a little bit on it, but kindness and self-compassion. And because it's one thing to see all this stormy weather that's going on in our internal experience, but it's another thing to learn about ourselves as far as how we meet that storm, right? And we can meet it with more judgment or more criticism or more whatever, but if we meet it with self-compassion and kindness, then it really changes the game as far as how we understand our own mind and hearts. And I think, well, in my personal experience, the more connected I felt to myself, the strange thing of I felt more connected to other people. It's like, oh man, I've been having a really hard time, and why wouldn't other people be having a hard time too? Like, why would I be the only one, you know? And this happens. People say this, like, I'm the only one that's ever felt this kind of pain, you know, or whatever. And how could we even know that, you know? But so I think this connection to yourself naturally leads to this interpersonal connection with others. Of course, we have to be deliberate too about, oh, let me try to empathize with other people, or try to mindfully communicate with others. And then I'm expanding here. So interpersonal, but also societal, you know, how are we connecting with city policy in our town and our local school communities, you know, and kind of taking inventory of that. And am I living in accord with, you know, the values here, et cetera. And also you can expand even further to, like you mentioned earlier on, like this connection to nature and other things, and the sense of not excluding anything. So mindfulness and kindness practice is not partial, right? It's like we don't exclude anything from our lives, because if we exclude some part of our life, then we'll instinctually exclude something we might actually need or want, you know.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, how can you pick and choose? And I'm kind of stealing that from Brene Brown's work of vulnerability.
We love Brene too. Yeah.
So I think it's a constant, it's a relational thing. And gosh, talking about mindfulness, how can you be original when there's just been so many great minds that have talked about it for centuries? Because I think about Alan Watts, the great Zen teacher and orator, and he said, he's like, life isn't a journey. Life's not a path. Life is a dance. You know? Like when you dance, you're not trying to get somewhere. You know, when you dance, you're in a relationship with the music or with someone else or with a group of people, and you're shifting and changing based on what they're offering. And vice versa. So that's the nature of connection, is just this constant ebb and flow, and this constant, like, you know, rising and falling, and, you know, and coming and going. So so again, to harken back to that idea of like everything's changing and impermanent, lest we get stuck in fixed mind, like, oh, it's just gonna be like this, you know, it's just gonna, you know, I'm going to be this way forever, or they, you know what, they over there, they're that kind of person. They're just kind of a mean person. And you just frozen them, you know, time, when everything, like, you know, is actually in flux, you know. But we actually have to pay attention, be mindful, be aware, to actually notice those changes. It's different to think about those changes and impermanence. It's different to just know, I know everything changes. I get it. You know, it's different to actually experience it and see it in real time. And it goes back to the experience versus intellect. You know? So.
Oh, that was such a great answer. So much to unpack in there. I love it.
I love it. It's my favorite thing to talk about. So yeah, appreciate you asking.
Thank you so much for being here. I loved this conversation. I could talk about it all day. Yeah.
Ajay, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your expertise, for taking this work on board. It's important work and people need it. So thank you for offering your workshops, offering your expertise, and coming on the show to teach us more about mindfulness. We really appreciated it.
Well, likewise, I appreciate the work you guys are doing and putting it out there. And yeah, it's meaningful work to expose people to connections that they may otherwise not see. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
If you've got a story inside of you, consider pitching it to us, the Connectors. Get in touch with us on any of our social media platforms, and either Joe or myself, Quentin, will get back to you. So come join us on the show and let's connect.